All right, Digging in the Crates Hip Hop Podcast. I am your host, the Hip Hop Wizard. I don't have my mask on today, as you can see. We're here in the studio, and on this special day, we're going to talk about where politics mixes with protest music. We got a special guest here who he'll introduce himself to our audience. Again, we're streaming live on Instagram. We're streaming live on Facebook. And so make sure you chime in if you have any questions for our special guest, who I have a pleasure to know for several years, also my fraternity brother, Groove Fire Groove. And it's special because he often comes to my classes at A&T and expounds a lot of knowledge on myself as well as a student. And so, without no further ado, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and for our audience and also for our interns, and kind of what brought you here today, and one question I want to start off: what was, if you could tell our audience, give us a vivid snapshot of life at A&T.
First of all, my name is Roy Thompson. I'm from Burlington, North Carolina. I entered North Carolina A&T College in 1964. So therefore, I had an opportunity to have a front row seat to history in terms of the civil rights movement at North Carolina A&T. I was a history major and political science major. So therefore, my interest has always been in history and how it affects us, and I wanted to make sure that when I graduated, I was able to tell our story. I am a Vietnam veteran. I spent 11 months in Vietnam. After coming from Vietnam, I was stationed at Fort Carson, Colorado, where I became a race relations instructor. I was one of the first soldiers sent to Cocoa Beach, Florida at the Defense Race Relations Institute. Reason being, there was so much strife and so much discourse in the United States Army at that time between the black and the white soldiers. And so company officers began to realize the need for dialogue between the black and white soldiers. And so they talked to the United States Department of Defense, and all branches came up with a Defense Race Relations Institute that would teach soldiers how to have race relation classes and interact with people from different races and get them to sit down and talk, because at that time, not only the Army, but the country was about to explode.
Okay. And, you meant, speaking of race relations, a lot of that we see today is quite different from the civil rights movement in some regards. But in some regards, when I think about college students, it reminds me of looking back in your era and you guys pushing the envelope a little forward, even though you're in the face of circumstances. And so when you think about that and you think about where we are, what are some of the dynamics that change before we get into the bulk of our show?
Well, first of all, my generation's experience in North Carolina A&T State University was totally different from what it is today. We grew up during the Jim Crow era of staunch segregation. Mm-hmm. You couldn't use the restrooms downtown. You couldn't try on clothes if you wanted to purchase something from a department store. If you wanted to order food from the restaurant at Woolworth, you had to stand at the corner to get your food. You couldn't sit down like a normal person. And so my generation students felt that well, enough was enough and with the degradation and the segregation and Jim Crowism. So we began to fight back. I came to A&T because of the four gentlemen that sit in and started the sit-in movement, because for me as a black young person growing up, that was the first time I ever saw black people stand up for themselves and fight back. Mm-hmm. But in terms of today, mm-hmm. I think the sophistication of racism and the way it works is a little different. And so the youth of today have a different type of challenges than what we had. So I think that one of the things that I see today is that a lot of the racism is kind of covert, okay. Is kind of undercurrent, and is not in your face like it was during my era. Mm-hmm. You know, if you grew up during that particular time, if you looked a white person in the eye or made a gesture of that you were angry or frustrated, it could lead to death or either, you know, some type of retaliation with violence.
Mm-hmm. So again, back then you're talking about lynchings. Well, in the '60s, you know, churches being burned. I watched several times of watch riots. You guys being hosed down, but you guys never gave up.
I think my first experience with hostility and racism on a national level was the 1963 bombing of the 16th Baptist Church, okay. And 4 little girls were killed while attending Sunday school, and that was my junior year in high school, because I graduated in 1964. Okay. And so that kind of brought it home that how much hatred and how much violence, how much people were willing to go to the lengths of violence to stop people from exercising their duly constitutional rights in this country, and made me realize that, and question whether or not we had any rights under the U.S. Constitution at all at that particular time. So after that, there began to be a lot of focus on the way we were treated, and blacks began to stand up and fight back. And one of the songs that I was telling you about is Nina Simone put out a song in 1964, which was in tribute to that was Mississippi Goddamn. Okay. And so that's why she put that song out, because she wanted to bring light onto what happened to those four young ladies in 1963 in Birmingham, Alabama.
You mentioned Nina Simone's song, and I'm going to preface something, then go back to what you were saying about the civil rights movement being in North Carolina. As we talked off the air, you mentioned Medgar Evers. You had Emmett Till, of course, there's a movie out about Emmett Till. You had the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing, killing of 4 black children. On the recording, sarcastically announces the song as a show tune, but the show hasn't been written for it yet. So, if you look at what we just mentioned, the 16th Street bombing, what was going on in Greensboro at that time? Because often, when you think about the civil rights movement, it's not much mentioned about Greensboro. Do you think it's more of because North Carolina's not really a southern state as like Alabama? Is there a difference there?
Greensboro to me was the fire that lit the civil rights movement across the nation. Okay. The first sit-in movement started at the Woolworth in 1960, and at that time I was in the 9th grade.
Okay.
So it was one of the few times that I saw black people on television.
Wow.
And it was, the news report was about, how the students were taking turns and having shifts where they would come and sit down at Woolworth and study. And then it also showed how groups of white men would take the bottles that had ketchup and mayonnaise and mustard, and as the students were sitting at the counter, they would squeeze the mustard and mayonnaise in their hair and down their backs. They would spit on them, they would smack them. But all that changed when, this is not told a lot, but that changed when the football team decided that they were going to be bodyguards to the students. And so they went down and surrounded the students. And one of the guys, a big lineman, I can't think of his name right now, a white guy put a cigarette out on his chest and he didn't flinch. And so that scared them, and they knew not to mess with those students, because they had people that would fight for them. And that's not told a lot, but that's exactly what happened. And you could clearly see it on TV. And then, you had Bennett students that would that joined with the students from A&T. And this was the first time that I saw where black people began to stand up, because what you have to realize is during this particular time, blacks were very submissive.
Okay.
They didn't fight. In fact, my mother told me when Emmett Till got killed, I was living in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was, in 1955, I was about 9 years old. And she was telling me, you don't look white people in the eyes. You walk across the street if they approach you. You bow your head, you yes sir, no ma'am, that type of thing. Don't get into any confrontation with them, because mothers feared for particularly young black boys' lives.
I want to stay on this track with music. So I'm a big lover of James Brown.
Right.
James Brown has been sampled so many times. I remember as a kid dancing and performing James Brown when he his song that he did with Full Force, Force MD's I'm the Real Super Bad, which was a song that he produced with the help of Full Force. So when you picture in your mind, when you hear a song that says, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," is a funk song performed by James Brown and written in his band leader Alfred Pee Wee Ellis in 1968. It was released as a two-part single, which held a #1 spot in R&B singles. To move on, James Brown, he addressed racism against black Americans and the need for black empowerment. So my first question is, when you hear that word, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," how does that ring bells to you? And then what was black empowerment like back then, and what do you think that needs to change to bring up black empowerment now according to this song?
Okay, first of all, it's a lot that has to be digested when talking about "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." Before that song came about, if somebody called you a black, that was a fight. Okay. Blacks, because you have been told that black was so negative, and black people had been so demoralized and told that they were ugly, they were lazy, they were this. It just was a whole bunch of negative stereotypes. So Malcolm X talked about blackness as a conscious, your identity as a conscious, and who you are, opposite the white folks, and being proud of your identity. And then Leroy Jones and some other guys started a artist guild that started promoting black identity, black pride, and black self-help. And so that song marked a turning point in the civil rights movement, where it went from being docile to it went to being more a powerful um, statement by black people that the docile way of life, the Jim Crow, as we know, we're going to challenge it from the way, and we're going to meet power with power. In fact, in Vietnam, that song was banned. Say It Loud and Black and the Power was banned because whenever it would come on, there would be an instant fight between black and white soldiers. Okay, and so also before Say It Loud and Black and I'm Proud came about, my freshman and sophomore years at A&T, the main philosophy of how to be successful was assimilation. Okay, and so you had guys that would conk their hair down, use ultra bleaching cream to try to get lighter. Anything to assimilate and to be as close to white as possible so you could be accepted in the workforce. Black identity and black self-help became about in the 66, 67 time period when blacks began to get tired, particularly the students tired of the all deliberate speed statements that the government and everybody was putting out, just be patient and continue to not fight back and you're going to be okay. Well, blacks got tired of it. We're going to liberate ourselves. We're going to empower ourselves. We're going to, there was a big push for economic independence from the European American. We need to own our own. We need to buy within our community. We need to support each other as black people. That ideology became synonymous with black power and Black Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud was the song that it spilled out of the grassroots people in the black community.
So when you heard songs like this, surely it empowered you. But at the same time, as far as the radio play, did it get a lot of radio play, or was it just?
It was everywhere. Everybody began to start overnight, as if the campus changed. Everybody started wearing afros. Our black sisters began to wear their hair natural.
Okay.
People began to embrace their blackness. There was a push on on HBCU campuses to have more black history on campus. There was a push to bring certain speakers and people to the various campuses. Began to get involved in student government and change the narrative of how students were treated at North Carolina A&T. And so it became an uplifting moment for black students. It became a mass movement towards black identity and black pride, having a sense of pride of who you were. Because, like I told you before this time period, if you call somebody black or you talked about something black, it lead to a fight. Because blacks didn't look upon themselves in a positive manner. We had people who would believe the actual things that Jim Crowism was talking about in terms of how black people were, even though we knew it wasn't true. But it's just like if 10 people come to you in your class and say, Mr. Hooker, you look sick today. By the afternoon, you'll be sick as a dog.
Yeah,
because it's your mind.
Yeah.
It's just like if you manipulate history, you manipulate consciousness. And if you manipulate consciousness, you manipulate possibilities. And so if you manipulate possibilities, That's power.
Right. So with these songs, and we'll move on to another song. So with songs like this, did this really help change people's mindset? Like a change is gonna come.
Yeah,
By,
it
by
did.
Sam Cooke.
It did.
It was a song by American songwriter Sam Cooke. It initially appeared on Cooke's album "Ain't That Good News," released mid-February 1964 by RCA Victor. The song was inspired by various events in Cooke's life, most prominently when he and his entourage returned away from a whites-only motel in Louisiana. So you still see that Jim Crow South mentality. So
Exactly.
were these songs a good reactionary, just like social media today, you can put stuff out now, but now were these songs in a more positive light, change some of the narrative?
These songs were a positive influence on us because it was something that we all collaborated together for. We were fighting the dehumanization of black people in this country, and we were fighting for blacks to have their equal place in this country just like everybody else. When he talks about going downtown and going to the movies, that was what I experienced as a child growing up. We never would be allowed to sit downstairs in the movies. We always had to sit up in the balcony. In a lot of movies, they would turn you away. There were only special movie theaters that would allow you to go in and look at a movie. Just like with the Woolworths, you could go in there and buy all the products, the toothpaste and the binders and every supplies that you might need to function as a student at A&T. But however, you couldn't sit down at the counter and get a sandwich. And that was what the City and Four Brothers were saying. We can buy all this stuff and we give you all our money, but yet and still we can't even sit down in here and eat. So the song that Sam Cooke wrote was expressing the frustration that black people had in terms of with Jim Crowism and how they were treated in this country.
Yeah, and moving on to a very good person that I admire for his music, has also been sampled. Marvin Gaye. I think to me, historically, I think Marvin Gaye died too early. I don't want to get into the specifics of it, but his music moved mountains, like Inner City Blues. I mean, just the melody. And I watched a video one time where he's talking about his music, make you wanna holler. Inner City Blues, it redirects here from the albums, the Inner City Blues, Grover Washington Jr. album, and the Inner City Blues, music of Marvin Gaye from the novel See Inner City Blues. It was released September 16, 1971. I was born July 24th, 1971. So as I got older, my grandmother and my aunt, they would always listen to Marvin Gaye, and they talked about having house parties, but they also talked about his impact of the music. So when you think about the song depicts the ghettos and the bleak economic situations, and I like the word economic because economically we have been deprived of the opportunity. Of certain things. Not to discount that race isn't an issue, but when you look at the bigger picture, this disparity is more socioeconomic. So if you can lend the ear with this song and what it meant, to our viewers.
Well, first of all, we need to realize why we were brought here in the first place is to make another race of people rich. We were not brought here to enjoy the fruits of what everybody else has been enjoying. We were brought here to make money for people. Free labor is what built this country. Okay, so that's the first thing. The second thing is Marvin Gaye really touched me. Reason being is that his brother was in Vietnam the same time that I was in Vietnam, 1971. And so when he sung that song, I knew he had talked to someone that had been to Vietnam and understood what it meant to go over there and go through fighting a war on two fronts. You know, you're fighting the enemy and you're fighting the people in the United States Army that were white also. And then when he made that song, and he talks about the economic piece, is that the statement is money, we make it. Before we see it, you take it. And the reason why is because, like you said, we don't produce anything, we don't own anything. So when you don't produce anything and own anything, you are a subject to the person that does. And so I understood that, you know, that's one of the reasons why some of the professors at North Carolina A&T during that time were trying to get you to assimilate so that you could get in the workforce, because that's the only thing that you had as an opportunity. You know, nobody talked about entrepreneurship. Nobody talked about having a career, a special skill that could turn into entrepreneurship. It was all about getting a job and work for somebody else. And so when you do that, you know, especially as black people, we have no economic independence. We have economic dependence. And we depend on another race of people for our survival. And when that happens, they can control the narrative of what you are going to be doing in this country. And so Berry Gordy didn't want Marvin to make that song because he didn't want to shine the protest light from Motown. He really wanted him to continue to make the love song because that's what they were doing during that time. But the grassroots people, as well as the celebrities, all came together to fight, you know, for our rights in this country. So that was one of the greatest songs ever written to me. NWA came out. You know, the day was a good day. I didn't have to use my AK. You know, what are you doing with an AK-47?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's a military assault weapon. You know, and if you ever seen what an AK-47 can do to somebody, you wouldn't want to be around it. We never talk about who is controlling these kids, who is getting them talking about killing each other, talking about drugs, trap houses, switching, all this type of language that's inappropriate and all this behavior that's inappropriate, but who actually is pushing it?
Right.
You know, and I think blacks are misinformed if they think that these rappers control this. They don't.
Okay. You heard it first. Digging in the Crates, hip hop podcast, the Hooker and Mac show, followed by the interns, the Hit Squad. So follow us on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook. Remember, every beat on the record lies jazz, hip hop, gospel music, country and western. Because music is for everyone. This is Digging in the Crates Hip Hop Podcast, the Hooker and Mac Show. And tune in to another time and another channel. And we out.
Thank you, brother.